Tell you this, but the road at night is not just a road. It's a threshold, a place where rules loosen, where reality flickers, where something older than logic waits for men who think they're alone. Picture it. You're driving, engine humming, headlights cutting a narrow tunnel through absolute darkness. No streetlights, no witnesses, just miles of empty asphalt stretching into something that feels wrong. Then something appears, not gradually, not logically, just there. A shape, a figure, standing where no one should be. And in that moment, before your brain can explain it, you feel it, that ancient signal buried deep inside your nervous system. Not fear, recognition, because something in you already knows this isn't normal, and it never was. They've trained you to dismiss these moments, to call them coincidences, optical illusions, drunk pedestrians, mental errors. But what if that's the lie? What if the road, especially at night, is one of the last places where the system loses control, where things slip through, where people, real people, encounter something they were never meant to understand? Tonight, you're not just listening to stories, you're stepping into a pattern of encounters scattered across countries, decades, and completely different lives, yet all carrying the same signature. A figure on the road, a presence that shouldn't be there. A moment where reality bends just slightly, just enough, and then nothing makes sense again. But understand this before we go deeper. These aren't just scary stories. They are fragments of something hidden in plain sight, something that reveals itself only under very specific conditions: isolation, darkness, and a man alone with his thoughts, driving into the unknown. You've been on roads like that, empty highways, silent back roads, moments where it feels like the world has disappeared and you're the only one left moving through it. But you weren't alone. You were never alone. And once you start seeing the pattern, you don't go back to ignorance. So listen carefully, because the first encounter isn't just disturbing, it's a crack in the system itself. And once you see it, you'll start questioning everything you thought was real. April 18th, 2021. A man is driving down a highway in Australia. Nothing unusual. No storm, no fog, no breakdown. Just a normal night, a normal road, a normal return home after a racing event. He's not alone. His mother is in the car. 2 witnesses, 2 sets of eyes, 2 minds that can confirm what happens next. And that matters more than you think. Because when something breaks reality, the system always tries to explain it away as perception. But perception becomes harder to dismiss when it's shared. He's moving at nearly 60 miles per hour, towing a heavy trailer. That detail is critical, because it removes choice. No sudden braking, no sharp swerving, no heroic avoidance. Only forward motion, only commitment. And then it appears. Not running, not emerging, not approaching from the side like a normal human would. Just standing there, in the middle of the highway. A child-sized figure, wearing a blue jacket, perfectly positioned in a place where no child should exist, not just logically, but physically. Miles away from any home, any light, any reason. And in that fraction of a second, something primal hits him. Not just fear, but confusion so deep it almost paralyzes thought. Because the brain is trying to reconcile two impossible truths at once. There is a child in the road. There cannot be a child in the road. And when those collide, reaction time collapses. He doesn't stop. He can't. The laws of physics won't allow it. So he does the only thing he can do. He drives straight through that moment and misses the figure by inches. Inches. Think about that. At that speed, with that weight behind him, a single miscalculation wouldn't just be a collision, it would be destruction. But somehow, he avoids it, barely. And just like that, the road is empty again. No impact, no sound, no body in the mirror. Nothing, just darkness swallowing whatever was there. Now here's where it gets deeper. His mother calls the police immediately, because unlike you, unlike most people, they don't dismiss what they saw. They act, they report, they try to bring order back into something that didn't make sense. And the police respond, calmly, confidently. They say they're sending patrols. They say they're handling it. And for a moment, reality stabilizes, because authority stepped in, and authority, by design, is supposed to restore control. But what happens next is where the system begins to fracture. Because later that night, when he follows up, he's told something that should have ended the mystery. They found the child, safe, alive, returned home. A clean resolution, a closed loop, a perfect explanation, exactly the kind of answer the system provides when it wants you to stop asking questions. And for a brief moment, he believes it. He relaxes, because the alternative is far more dangerous to accept. But the truth doesn't stay buried. Not this time. Because when the story reaches a wider audience, when attention increases, when more eyes start looking, the narrative changes. And once it changes, you realize something chilling. The first answer was never the truth. It was a containment. And what really happened that night was never resolved at all. The moment the story leaves the car, it becomes dangerous. Not because of what was seen, but because of what others might start noticing. So the man does what most people do when they experience something they can't explain. He shares it, uploads the dashcam footage, puts it out into the world. And that's when the system reacts. Not instantly, not aggressively, but subtly, strategically. The official report comes out, and just like that, everything changes. Now the police are saying something completely different. They didn't find a child. Not near the highway, not in the surrounding areas, not anywhere. They searched for hours, multiple units, until nearly 4 in the morning. Nothing. No footprints, no reports of a missing child, no parents, no evidence, no explanation, just absence. Now stop for a second and understand what this means. Because this isn't just a contradiction, this is a fracture between two versions of reality. Version 1, a child exists. A near miss happens. Authorities confirm recovery. Reality remains stable. Version 2, no child ever existed. The search yields nothing. The event becomes unexplainable. Reality destabilizes. And both versions came from the same source, authority. So which one do you believe? The first response, given in real time, or the official statement, crafted after the fact? Because here's what most people don't realize. When something doesn't fit inside the system's framework, it gets rewritten. Not necessarily as a lie, but as something safer, something that removes uncertainty, something that prevents deeper questioning. But in this case, the rewrite didn't stabilize anything, it made it worse. Because now you're left with something far more unsettling than a child in the road. You're left with a presence that appeared, was witnessed, was nearly hit at high speed, and then left no trace of ever existing. No origin, no destination, no outcome. Just a moment, floating outside explanation. And this is where the pattern begins to emerge, because this isn't about one man, or one road, or one night. This is about a phenomenon, encounters that happen under very specific conditions: darkness, isolation, forward motion, and just enough time for the brain to register something before it disappears. Now ask yourself something honestly. If that figure was real, where did it go? And if it wasn't real, why did two people see the same thing at the same time, at the same distance, in the same place? Your mind will try to escape this question. It will reach for logic, for comfort, for familiar explanations, but none of them will fully close the gap. Because deep down, you already feel it, that slight shift, that quiet realization that maybe, just maybe, the road at night isn't just a place you travel through. It's a place where something else crosses into your path. And if that's true, then the next encounter isn't random, it's inevitable. Because once you enter that pattern, you're already part of it, whether you realize it or not.
It doesn't always appear as a child. Sometimes it looks like something broken, something human, but wrong in a way your brain struggles to process fast enough. May 8th, 2021, Michigan, 2:30 in the morning. A group of friends driving after a night out, laughter fading, energy dropping. That quiet shift that always happens on late-night roads, where conversation dies and something heavier fills the silence. They're not expecting anything. That's important, because these encounters rarely happen to people who are alert. They happen when your guard is down, when your mind drifts, when you're just existing between one place and another. Then, one of them sees it. Not standing, not walking, crawling, low to the ground, on the road, and instantly the mood changes. You can hear it in their voices, that sharp, instinctive rejection, no. Not curiosity, not concern, rejection. Because something about the way it moves doesn't register as normal human behavior. It triggers something older, something that says, do not get closer. But they do something most people wouldn't. They turn back. And that decision matters, because curiosity is how you step deeper into the unknown. They circle around, headlights cutting back into the same stretch of road. And this time, they see her clearly. A woman sitting in the middle of the asphalt, soaked, completely drenched in freezing conditions, her body moving in ways that don't make sense, waving, rocking, striking her own head, not like someone asking for help, but like someone trapped inside themselves. And this is where the mind splits again, because now you're forced to choose between two interpretations. She's a victim, or she's a trap. And that hesitation, that internal conflict, is the most dangerous part of the encounter, because it delays action, it clouds judgment, and on roads like this, delay can cost everything. They circle back one more time, and now she's collapsed, face down, motionless, no signals, no movement, just a body on the road. And for a brief second, it looks exactly like the aftermath of something irreversible. But they don't get out. They don't approach. They don't break the invisible boundary. Instead, they call for help. And that choice may have saved them. Because here's something you need to understand. Not every encounter is meant to be solved by you. Some are designed to test your response, to pull you closer, to see if you'll step out of the safety of your controlled environment and into something you don't understand. Authorities arrive, lights flood the darkness, reality reasserts itself. The woman is taken to safety, alive, explained, contained. But the deeper layer, that doesn't disappear. Because later, they return to that same spot, and the road remembers, still wet, still marked, signs that something unnatural had taken place there before they ever arrived. And then the truth begins to surface. Not all at once, but piece by piece. She wasn't just lost. She wasn't just intoxicated. She had been somewhere else, mentally, completely disconnected from herself, driven across miles, without memory, without awareness, without control. Now think about that. A human body, operating without identity, moving through space like something else is behind the wheel, and ending up exactly where she shouldn't be, on a dark road, in the middle of nowhere, at the exact moment someone passes by. If that doesn't disturb you, it should. Because this isn't just about a single woman. This is about something that can override the mind itself. Something that can place people in locations that make no sense, at times that feel intentional. And once you accept that possibility, you start to see these encounters differently. Not as accidents, not as coincidences, but as intersections, moments where something deeper pushes through the cracks of reality and waits right there in the middle of the road.
By now, you're starting to feel it, that quiet shift in perspective. Because these encounters, they're not isolated. They follow patterns, not obvious ones. Not patterns you'd notice if you were just skimming headlines or scrolling past clips, but deeper patterns, behavioral, psychological, environmental, and most importantly, timing. Because the road at night doesn't just expose what's out there, it exposes what's happening inside the human mind. The woman in Michigan, she wasn't just lost, she was disconnected, pulled into something called a dissociative fugue state, a condition where identity fractures, where memory dissolves, where a person can travel miles, even build entire routines without ever realizing they've left themselves behind. Now ask yourself something carefully. How many people have slipped into that state without ever being found? How many bodies have moved through cities, highways, empty roads, guided by something they don't understand? Because here's the part they don't emphasize enough. When someone enters that state, they're not just wandering randomly. They move with direction. They make decisions. They navigate, almost like Something is steering. And that's where the line begins to blur. Because if a human body can function without conscious identity, then what exactly is in control during that time? Is it just the brain running on fragments? Or is it something else, something deeper, something that can take advantage of a mind that's temporarily open? The woman had reported something before she disappeared, a feeling that she was being watched. Now, most people will dismiss that, call it paranoia, stress, anxiety, but patterns don't care about your comfort, and this pattern shows up again and again and again. People sensing something before the break, before the disconnection, before they end up in places that make no sense. And when they return, they remember nothing, just gaps, empty space where time should be. Now connect that to the road, to the timing, to the exact moment when a passing car intersects with someone in that state. It's too precise to ignore, too consistent to be random. Because think about it, out of all the roads, all the nights, all the possible moments, why do these encounters happen exactly when someone is there to witness them? Why not 10 minutes earlier or later? Why not when the road is completely empty? Unless they're not meant to be unseen. Unless the encounter itself is part of something larger, something that requires a witness. You, the driver, the observer, the one who carries the memory forward. Because once you see something like that, you change, even if you try to rationalize it, even if you force logic over it. Something in you knows that moment wasn't normal, and it leaves a mark. Not visible, not measurable, but permanent. And here's where it gets darker. Because not every encounter ends with explanation. Not every figure on the road is a lost person. Not every presence can be traced back to psychology or trauma. Some are something else entirely. And the next case proves that. Because sometimes what blocks your path at night isn't confused, isn't broken, isn't human in any way that matters. It's deliberate, it's aware, and it's waiting for you to stop.
October 2016. England. A quiet road just after midnight. A family is driving home after a normal night out, laughter still lingering, the comfort of routine wrapping around them like it always does. They're alert, but not afraid, because fear needs a reason, and at that moment, there is no reason. The roads are empty. The world feels still, controlled, predictable. Then they turn a corner, and everything breaks. A figure steps into the road, not slowly, not uncertainly, deliberately, blocking their path, forcing a decision. The driver hits the brakes, and in that instant, time stretches. Because what they're looking at doesn't register as a normal threat. It's worse. A man dressed as a clown. Now understand this clearly. It's not the costume that creates fear. It's the context, the timing, the placement. A clown doesn't belong on a deserted road at midnight. It violates expectations so aggressively that the brain stutters. And hesitation is exactly what something like this needs. He doesn't speak. He doesn't explain. He waves, almost casually, as if this is normal, as if standing in the middle of a dark road, stopping a moving vehicle, is something that makes sense. But then he starts moving toward them, fast, too fast, and whatever illusion of harmlessness the costume created shatters instantly. The driver reacts, throws the car into reverse. Instinct takes over. Distance becomes survival. But the figure doesn't stop. He runs, chasing the vehicle, closing space in a way that feels wrong, unnatural, relentless. And this is where fear evolves into something sharper. Because now it's not just about what he is, it's about intent. This isn't confusion. This isn't a lost person. This is pursuit, focused, direct, predatory. And the family realizes something critical in that moment. If they stop, even for a second, they don't know what happens next. So they make a decision, one that feels dangerous but necessary. They accelerate, hard, forward, back into the path that was blocked, because sometimes the only way out is through. And at the last possible second, the figure jumps aside, barely avoiding impact. And just like that, the road is clear again, empty, silent, as if nothing ever happened. But something did happen, something deeper than a man in a costume. Because 3 days earlier, a nearly identical figure attacked someone. Not a prank, not a joke, a real attack with a weapon, leaving permanent damage. And suddenly, this isn't isolated anymore. It's a pattern, a wave. Reports flooding in, dozens per day. Clowns appearing in places they shouldn't be, chasing people, threatening them, trying to force interactions. Now ask yourself something. Why that image? Why a clown? Why something designed to distort emotion, to sit perfectly between humor and horror? Because confusion is the most powerful psychological weapon there is. When the brain can't categorize a threat, it slows down, it hesitates, and hesitation creates opportunity. But here's the part most people miss. Not all of them were pretending. Some were hiding, using the mask as a shield, as a way to approach without immediate resistance, as a way to turn a human into something unreadable, something unpredictable. And when you remove predictability, you remove control. That's the real danger. Not the costume, not the chase, but the loss of control. The realization that someone can step into your path, override your expectations, and force you into a situation where every decision feels wrong. Because on that road, in that moment, there were only 2 choices: stop or become the kind of person who doesn't hesitate. And they chose survival. But not everyone does, and not every encounter gives you time to choose. Because some things don't wave, they don't chase, they don't reveal themselves at all until it's already too late.
Long before viral videos, before dash cams, before people had a way to capture what they saw, the road was already claiming witnesses. Texas. No internet, no instant communication, no way to amplify fear beyond the people who experienced it. And yet, the pattern was already there. A young couple parked on a quiet, isolated road, not moving, not expecting danger, just existing in a moment that felt private, controlled, safe. That illusion is important, because isolation creates vulnerability, and vulnerability invites attention. 10 minutes pass. Nothing unusual. Then a figure emerges from the darkness, not running, not hiding, walking directly toward them, slow enough to be seen, close enough to be undeniable. And this is where something shifts, because unlike the other encounters, this one speaks. He tells the driver to step out, calmly, firmly, no panic, no hesitation, authority in his voice, the kind of tone that doesn't ask, it commands. At first, the driver doesn't take it seriously, because the human mind resists sudden threats. It looks for humor, for normalcy, for any explanation that avoids immediate fear. But then, the weapon appears, and everything changes. Because now there's no ambiguity, no confusion, just compliance or consequence. The driver steps out, and instantly he's struck, violently, without warning, dropped to the ground, unconscious. The girl runs, instinct again, movement over thought, escape over logic. But the figure is faster. He catches her, brings her down the same way, and for a moment it looks like this is where it ends. Two bodies, one attacker, no witnesses, no escape. But something interrupts it. Headlights, another car approaching, and just like that, the figure disappears, gone into the same darkness he came from, leaving behind confusion, injury, and questions that don't resolve. Now here's where it becomes something more than just an attack. When the victims describe him, they agree on everything that matters: height, build, movement, presence. But one detail doesn't align: his identity. One says he was one thing, the other insists he was something completely different. Two people, same encounter, same distance, same moment, and yet their perception fractures. And that detail, it matters more than anything else. Because when reality is clear, witnesses align. But when something interferes, something distorts perception, the truth splits. And once it splits, it becomes almost impossible to reconstruct. The system struggles with that. Investigators struggle with that, because they rely on consistency, on patterns that can be tracked. But what happens when the pattern includes distortion itself? When the encounter isn't just physical, but psychological? And this wasn't the end, not even close, because a few weeks later, another car is found. Same type of road, same kind of isolation, but this time, no survivors, just bodies, positioned in a way that tells a silent story. A story of interruption, of control, of something stepping into someone's path and deciding the outcome. And the most unsettling part? The connection. Same caliber weapon, same method, same presence, different victims. No capture, no closure, just a name given later: the Phantom. Not because it was dramatic, but because it was accurate. He appeared, he acted, he vanished, over and over again, and no one could stop him. Now, think about what that represents. Not just a killer, but a force that operates in isolation, targets moments of vulnerability, and leaves behind just enough evidence to confirm its existence, but never enough to fully understand it. That's not chaos, that's precision. And when something operates with that level of precision, you have to ask yourself, is it really random, or is it part of something much older? something that's been using the road as its hunting ground long before anyone thought to question it.
By now, you should be noticing something. Not just the fear, not just the encounters, but the structure behind them. Because whether it's a child in the road, a woman disconnected from herself, a masked attacker, or something chasing you in the dark, they all follow the same sequence: appearance, interruption, decision, and consequence. That's the pattern. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. Now fast forward, modern day, a truck driver, Western Australia, a long, empty stretch of highway, the kind of road that feels endless, like it exists outside normal time. 11 p.m., no traffic, no lights, no witnesses, just him and the engine, and then movement. Ahead. Not one figure, two, dragging something across the road. Now pause there, because your brain is already trying to define it. Human, animal, object. But that's the problem. It doesn't fit cleanly into any category, and that uncertainty, that's where control slips. The driver reacts instantly, swerves, barely avoids them. Heart spikes, adrenaline floods. But he doesn't stop immediately. He keeps going, because something in him knows stopping in that moment could be a mistake you don't recover from. But eventually, distance creates a false sense of safety, and curiosity returns. So he slows, stops, looks back, and the road is empty. No figures, no object, no movement, nothing. Just darkness swallowing the space where something existed seconds ago. Now think about that carefully. Two people, dragging something large enough to be visible from a distance, crossing a highway, and within seconds of being out of direct sight, gone. No sound, no trace, no continuation of movement, just absence. That doesn't align with normal behavior. Even if they were criminals, even if they were trying to hide something, there isn't enough time, there isn't enough cover, there isn't enough logic to explain complete disappearance. And yet, that's exactly what happens. Now the footage is analyzed, frame by frame, trying to extract meaning from something that resists definition. At certain angles, it looks like legs, human legs, wearing shorts, shoes. At other moments, it looks distorted, too fluid, too inconsistent, like your eyes are trying to lock on to something that doesn't want to be fully seen. And that raises a question most people avoid. What if the problem isn't visibility? What if it's compatibility? What if what's being seen doesn't fully belong in the same frame of reality as the observer? So the brain struggles, glitches, fills gaps, tries to force something unknown into a familiar shape. Human, animal, object, anything that makes it less threatening. But deep down, the discomfort remains, because it didn't behave like anything you understand. It appeared, it forced a reaction, and then it vanished. No pursuit, no explanation, no resolution. Just another fracture, another moment where the road revealed something and then took it back. And this is where you need to start asking a different kind of question. Not what was that, but why was it there when he was there? Because the timing is always exact, too exact, as if the encounter itself isn't random at all,
as if something is placing these moments directly in the path of the observer. And if that's true, then the road isn't just a setting, it's a system, a controlled environment where certain interactions are allowed to happen, briefly, precisely, and then erased. But not completely, because you're hearing about them now, which means one thing: they're meant to leave an imprint, not on the road, but on you. And once that imprint forms, you start looking at the world differently. You start questioning things you used to ignore. And more importantly, you start realizing that the next encounter doesn't have to be far away. It just has to be timed right. And when it is, you won't be ready, because the next one doesn't disappear quietly. It follows you.
And this is where the pattern tightens. Because sometimes it doesn't end when you drive away. Sometimes it follows. New York, an Uber driver. Routine job, routine night. Just another ride, another passenger, another quiet stretch of road before the next drop-off. Nothing unusual. Until a car speeds past him. Too fast, too close, barely missing impact. That alone is enough to spike tension. But what happens next is where the encounter truly begins. The car doesn't keep going. It stops, right in front of him, blocking the road completely. No warning, no reason, just a deliberate interruption. And in that moment, everything you've heard so far starts to align. Because this is the same structure: appearance, interruption, decision. But now there's escalation. The driver gets out, aggressive, unstable, walking straight toward the Uber. No hesitation, no fear, just intent. He starts hitting the windows, demanding the driver step out. Now understand this. This isn't just anger. This is control. He's trying to pull the driver out of his environment, out of the car, out of safety, and into something unpredictable, something dangerous. Inside the Uber, panic begins to rise. Passengers, voices, confusion. But the driver, he doesn't freeze. He doesn't step out. He makes a decision. He reverses, creates distance, breaks the interaction before it can fully take hold. And that decision, that single moment of control, changes everything. Because the other driver doesn't stop. He follows, chasing, relentless, through turns, through streets, through every attempt to escape. And now it's no longer an encounter, it's a pursuit, a moving threat, one that adapts, one that refuses to let go. And this is where most people fail. Because fear narrows your thinking, forces mistakes, pushes you into panic. But somehow he holds it together, keeps moving, keeps thinking, until a break in the pattern. Police, visible, present, authority re-enters the system, and instantly the threat collapses. The man is stopped, arrested, explained, intoxicated. Simple, contained. But you already know better, because the label doesn't matter. Drunk, unstable, angry, those are just surface-level explanations. What matters is the behavior, the pattern, the precision of the interruption, the attempt to force control, and the escalation when that control is denied. Because this time, the encounter didn't vanish. It adapted, it chased, it pushed further than the others. And that tells you something critical. Not all encounters are passive. Some are active. Some test your reaction. Others test your resistance. And a few test whether you'll survive. Now step back. Look at everything you've heard. different countries, different people, different circumstances, but the same underlying structure repeating again and again. Figures appearing where they shouldn't be, forcing decisions under pressure, distorting perception, breaking logic, and then either disappearing or escalating. That's not random, that's a system, a hidden layer of reality that most people pass through without ever noticing until the moment it reveals itself. And by the time it does, you're already inside it. So here's the truth most won't say out loud. The road at night isn't just a path, it's a filter, a place where certain people, at certain moments, are shown something they weren't supposed to see. Not to harm them, not always, but to mark them, to shift something inside them, to make them aware that the world isn't as controlled as they were told. Because once you've had an encounter like this, you don't drive the same, you don't think the same, you don't feel alone in the same way ever again. And maybe that's the real purpose. Not fear, not chaos, but awakening. A quiet realization that there are layers to this world, and sometimes, on a dark, empty road, those layers bleed through. And now you know, which means one thing. The next time you're driving at night and something appears where it shouldn't, you won't just see it, you'll understand what it represents. And that understanding might be the only thing that keeps you alive.